Ready? I would like to call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, November 28, 2023 to order. Could we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Berry, could you call the roll?
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
By Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. We have no presentation scheduled tonight. Item 6, department reports. Trustee DeMink.
From Parks and Rec Leisure Services, good evening. It is my pleasure to invite you to the annual tree lighting celebration. This free community affair will be hosted outdoors here at the township offices, utilizing both the township grounds and the historical village. Please join us in bringing together our community for the joy of the season and to welcome Santa to Chesterfield. All township board members will be there and are invited to stand on the stage. Arrive no later than 6:45 p.m., meeting by the stage at the center island. Santa arrives at 7 p.m. by fire truck. There'll be a lighting of the tree and presentation of the key to Chesterfield Township. From 7 to 9 p.m., there'll be indoor photos with Santa, hot cocoa bar, Bigby coffee, horse-drawn carriage rides, Chesterfield ornaments, warming stations, coloring contests, and goodies to take home. There will be a hot donut truck available for purchase. Thank you again and hope to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee DeMink. Further department reports. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Just a quick update from the library board. The recent library board meeting on 11/15, the big issue that was on the agenda that night was the audit that had recently been completed. The library accounting firm delivered an unqualified audit, which is, as you know from our audits, top-notch. Their financial records are in great shape. According to the auditor, they have a very strong balance sheet, $6.1 million in liquid assets. They typically, their revenue outpaces their expenditures, and their overall situation is very strong. There was continued discussion about the potential partnership with the township regarding the potential library space being over at Sugar Bush Elementary. They've been through with some of our people, our F&O, and Mr. Supervisor, I know you've had library board members through the building, and they continue to look at the feasibility of that. One suggestion that I did make to the library board is having the opportunity to sit in with their board meetings and looking at their balance sheets. They seem to be in stronger shape than the township board, and my suggestion was, why don't they look at purchasing the building and bring us in as potential tenants? They seem to do a much better job with their finances, so hopefully that is something that they consider. But the space looks like it could possibly work for them, and they will continue to evaluate this as more is known about the actual condition of the building too. There needs to be some work done with regard to what kind of shape the building is in. It's 50 years old, and as we know from the township, a 35-year-old building, and we're looking at millions of dollars in upgrades. So why we would buy a 50-year-old building, I'm not too sure yet, but we'll wait to see what those reports come back with, and I think the library is doing the same. But overall, library seems to be in good shape financially. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further department reports, we'll move on to public comments. Item 7. Clerk Berry.
Item 7, public comments on agenda items only with a 3-minute time limit.
The mic is open for public comments.
Christopher Pierrick, Chesterfield Township. I noticed that there's a couple agenda items on here that were carryovers from the last meeting. Item C is the extension of the GFL contract, and item E is the approval for IT support for the safety department. So last time we met, there was those two items were voted down, and there was a lot of conversations and comments and questions about whether the proper channels were followed to support these things. And hopefully today, when we talk about these things, some of those questions and comments will be addressed. I trust all of you will use transparency and integrity to make good decisions. Thank you.
My name is Joe Kadich. I live at 32825 Sutton. We've got some, being that we get 3 minutes to cover the whole agenda. It doesn't give you very much, but a couple of things I'd like to get answers to before we get into the budget. Somebody wants to write these down or comment now. What is going on, and has the grant, the Hertel grant, the McLean grant of I think $4 or $5 million each, the remains of the ARPA fund, and the supposed $15 million bond that we were buying, has that been secured? Is that being applied to this budget? If so, what areas is going to cover? I'm particularly worried about the water department budget. It's lacking a lot of things, and I'd like to know what's the status of those grants. And then the other one is in the police budget, was, I guess, setting again 7.9 mils for 2024, and how much money is going to be generated from the property tax on that? Does anybody give me an idea? I'm sorry? Okay. Then I want to get into the GFL contract, which everybody thought, and I thought the last time, should have been out for bid. The whole thing was done somewhat secretly between the supervisor, the treasurer, and Trustee Vossenberg. Left some openings in there for why did we want to go for a single bid? It just doesn't make sense. People that were here and people on Facebook said the same thing. There should be a town hall meeting on that, see what the residents feel about it, what should be changed, what needs to be changed, and then put it out for bid. Just doesn't make any sense. I like GFL, I've not had a problem with them. But the way it was done is not proper. You're trying to sign a contract for $18 million over the 5 years, committing to all the residents to pay for it. And I don't like the fact that if somebody doesn't pay their bill, the township puts a lien on their property. Now, why it's that way, it should be up to GFL. They can go to court, small claims court or whatever it is, try and reclaim the money. But why is the township engaging in that? It doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments?
Paul Lafata. First of all, the bill run's got some more purchase policy violations in it. There's purchasing for Brandenburg Park from R.J. Thomas for $4,986. Then there's another one from R.J. Thomas on the same day for another $41,666. You're not supposed to piecemeal those, so you don't have to come to the board for approval. Also, there's invoices from Porter and Black for $4,600 and another one for $3,950. And they're invoiced to Department 101. They're not invoiced to 205, which is public safety. So Porter and Black must be in this purchasing thing too, because that's another $5,000 without approval. Your township budget, it's not a structured budget. It's a manipulated budget. There's no way anybody is going to get a perfect budget when you're going to have $9,998,761 of revenue and the exact same amount for expenditures. It's not going to happen. And in the budget, what you've got is you got a misstatement for sewer and water. You're saying that the rates have never been raised. Well, the only year that wasn't raised was because of COVID. Great Lakes didn't raise our rates, so we didn't raise them to the residents. It's a misstatement. But the problem is there's a ton of misallocation of general fund coming out of the water and sewer department. You got facilities and engineering leaching on the Sierra building, and all the utilities, depreciation, everything else is getting sucked out of the water and sewer fund. Another statement I'll make is in the sewer and water bills and the commodity charge and in the RTS charge, the residents pay $2.4 million a year towards depreciation. Over the last 6 years, that's almost $14.4 million collected for depreciation. Where did it all go? Problem is inefficiencies. You got the water and sewer department, and you got facilities and engineer, and you're calling it DPS now. And what you got is you've got two directors, for one for water and sewer, one for facilities and operations. You got 2 assistant directors managing 27 people. That's 6.75 people per. You got too many chiefs and not enough Indians. There's something wrong. It's very inefficient. But this whole budget is structured so that the supervisor looks good, because there's 226 pages and half of it's gobbledygook explaining how great it is.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments? Any further comments?
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. Just picking up where Mr. LaFata left off on the bill run. He named the key points that I was going to hit on, but I also noticed under the supervisors, Supervisor Kersten, you had a lot of events that you charged the residents back on. It looked like most of them were luncheons and photo ops. So again, you know, at the salary that you're making, over $100,000 per year, I don't think any of those charges are relevant and should be charged back to the residents. Treasurer Elliott, in your department, you had charges too, but you didn't put names on them. And I've requested several times that on taxpayers' money, I want names on every one of those bill runs on where that money is allocated. On the going back to the 24 fiscal budget, the proposed budget tonight, I mean, Mr. LaFata said it, it's a manipulated budget. So it's manipulated for tonight, and then it's going to be adjusted accordingly as the year goes on. Unfortunately, everybody's banking on the residents aren't going to pay attention to the budget amendments throughout the year. I also noticed on there, and maybe this would probably be a question for Treasurer Elliott, on the proposed budget, Treasurer Elliott, can you please tell me who Nicole Thomas is, when she was hired, and when it came to this board to add someone new to your department? Because I noticed that you added her, you moved Crystal down to assistant treasurer. So I don't ever remember that coming to the board, and I don't ever remember any approval for that. And then while you're at it too, at the last board meeting, I asked you to recuse yourself for the GFL. I'm going to ask you again to recuse yourself for that until you can explain to me that photo on social media with you and at the time Mayor Owens in a suite. I'm going to ask you to recuse yourself on that vote. So asking GFL if they own a suite isn't a sufficient question. Of course they're not going to own a suite. They don't own them. They lease them, they buy tickets, and they give them out throughout the year. So if you could please answer that question on who purchased those tickets that night in March that you ran into Mayor Owens and what suite that was that you were in, I would appreciate it. But until then, I'm going to ask you to recuse yourself on that. And I'm also going to ask this board, I have no issues with GFL at all, but it's a complete violation of our APO not to get an outside bid to see if GFL was even competitive in the bid. We don't know that. And then at that time, up until then, you're wasting taxpayers' money because we don't have the answer to that. So you're in violation of your own APO. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Good evening, Janice Young, Yorkshire. I just am having Karen pass out the code of ethics and values that this board is supposed to follow, just in case you didn't know that was on your website. On the agenda, item 10C, the trash hauler contract, there's still no bids. It's still in violation of your APO 11-2019, Section 2. Mr. Siebert, maybe you can answer some questions. Why does the board have an APO, and what are the consequences for not following it? We all know that the appearance of the rates are going down is likely not going to be the case with the addition of the fuel escalator and the emergency pickup fees. That fuel escalator, we still really weren't clear. I wasn't understanding how it's going to be calculated. I think we need to have a more clear formula provided. Still waiting on the definition of what a unit actually is. All the residents should be provided with that calculation when the bills come out. The elderly and not so tech-savvy people may not know how to calculate their bills. On the emergency pickups, we're still not told how the hourly cost will be distributed. Is it pro rata split and included in the residents' quarterly bills, or will it impact our taxes? And what will be done to prevent excessive expenses for this new service? Will this procedure be in writing for ordering special pickups, so that I can FOIA it if there's a request I need to see? Item 10D, Copier lease agreement. Congratulations to the board on following the APO and the QBS process. You can do it for a Copier lease, but not a $500,000 IT contract or multi-million-dollar trash hauler contract. Item 10E is the IT support for the Department of Safety. Why is it back on the agenda without bids, without a QBS process? Trustee Vosberg, you had said at the last meeting that a department head can waive the bid process. I don't think Director Bassett not knowing or trusting another vendor is a compelling reason to ignore the APO on almost a $500,000 contract. Clerk Berry suggests that the township go out for an RFP for all the township and public safety IT services, since the contract for the vendor for the township is also expiring in the coming weeks. Why would we not do that? It seems like the right thing to do. 10F, the Parks and Rec ordinance. I'm still against the board being able to approve and develop a park at any time without a defined written process for doing so. Where is the written process? Brandenburg will be operating at a $474,000 deficit according to the 2024 budget. Do we really need to add the expense of allowing dogs in the park to that deficit? Item 10G, the sewer treatments. You want to spend $42,000 treating the sewer line. From the executive summary in the agenda, the H2S is a highly corrosive gas formed in sewer pipes by bacteria. Once the bacteria has eaten all the available nutrients in the sewer, the bacteria begins to strip the needed nutrients from the cement pipe walls in the sanitary main. Candace Miller even said that was what's happened to the interceptor drain that we now took ownership of and have to pay for. In light of these issues and the flooding that occurred this summer, I have one question. Why is this board not using the balance of our ARPA funds to fix our sewer system? We've got $3.5 million left in that fund. Don't spend it on a school.
Any further comments from the public? We'll close the public comment section and we'll move to number 8, consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. 8A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 14th, 2023. B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Supervisor Kersten.
Clerk Berry, I would ask that the bill run be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately, please.
You can acknowledge it.
Acknowledged.
I'll continue to support. Item 8B will be moved under the regular agenda. That's satisfactory?
Yes.
Clerk Berry, if you call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 9, public hearing. There is a public hearing scheduled tonight. There is a 3-minute time limit. Clerk Berry?
9A is to conduct a public hearing to hear comments on the proposed Chesterfield Township Budget for the 2024 fiscal year. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion by Clerk Berry to open the public hearing at 8:17. Supported by Trustee Deming. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Public hearing is open. Comments from the public on the budget? Comments on the budget?
Janice Young, Yorkshire. I'm just going to kind of go in order. I didn't get through the whole budget because it's 227 pages, I believe, so I'm just going to go in order of a few things that I've noticed. Karen Garvey last year in 2023 was considered, her title was Management Services Coordinator. In the proposed budget, she is now the Assistant Supervisor. Not the assistant to the supervisor, but the Assistant Supervisor. So I didn't know we had that. I'd like to know when she got the promotion and what she's in charge of making decisions on if she run things when the supervisor is not in the office. Under investment in Chesterfield, the Northeast Sewer Service Project is wrong and should never have been approved. If it is a responsibility of the developers to pay for the sewer service when they build. But this board has strapped the expenses, $5.9 million, to all the current residents. What happens if development slows and it doesn't get fully developed for decades? We, the current residents, will be paying for it. The Neptune remote water meter reading software that this board spent $400,000 of our ARPA funds on so that residents can have continuous access to their own water usage. I wonder how many residents actually want to know that data. I think the residents would rather have that money spent on sewer and drain issues. Maintaining financial feasibility, stability. You've already passed on one water increase, and there's another one coming next month. Community focus, the dog park proposal will be back. 80 residents chimed in on that when it came to the board a few months back, out of 46,000 people. So I don't know how we could possibly justify spending any money on something that 80 residents, 80, talked about. On the topic of parks, Brandenburg revenue is only $141,000 with its expenses for 2024 budgeted at $615,000. That's a deficit of over $474,000. I wonder if the majority of residents know or understand that they are paying almost $500,000 to maintain that park on top of the $5 they have to spend to enter it. I know everyone loves Brandenburg, but did they love $500,000 worth of it? The supervisor's mission statement, to serve the residents with integrity and honest and open communication, to develop clear processes and procedures in collaboration with the Board of Trustees. It ends with, to provide leadership and direction in all departments with encouraging best practice policies. That's kind of funny. I think you really need to study your mission statement and see if your leadership and direction actually reflect what's in it, because from this side of the podium, it does not. And one final note on the remaining ARPA funds. At the last library board meeting, it was mentioned that this board is considering buying Sugar Bush Elementary to house the library and community center, and perhaps using the remaining ARPA funds to do it. This board has already spent $1.3 million of those funds. We only have $3.5 million left. Please use the funds to fix our sewer infrastructure and not buy a dilapidated building that will cost only knows how much to fix it. It's unknown. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Paul Lafata. On page 18 of the budget, some people read the budget before they come here because there's no presentation, but I do my homework before I come. There's a statement that says that the funding balance is 125% of the annual operating cost. Well, that's a misstatement, because if it's 125%, it can't be $9,087,870,000. It needs to be, mathematically, it needs to be $12,498,451. So we have a budget with some errors in it. There's also another error. If you look at Public Safety Department, they're saying that they have expenditures of $17,518,320. Well, if you go to each individual expenditure for the police department, the fire department, and the public safety, and you total it up, it only comes to $16 million. There's a $536,717 mistake there. Now, if we look at the misallocations for the Sierra building, F&O is a general fund expenditure. They utilize that building, and they don't pay any of the annual bond payments. They don't pay any of the depreciation for the building or the shared equipment. They don't share in the depreciation for the equipment. They don't share annual maintenance costs of the building. They don't share utilities. They don't share cable and internet. They don't share IT equipment. Everything is put into the water and sewer department, including in a budget. There's a salt dome in there that's billed to the water and sewer department for $127,000 in the budget. And salt domes, road and streets, highways, that's general fund. That's not water and sewer. This budget is just, it's terrible. It's a manipulated budget, and it shouldn't even be approved. It's terrible. And I don't know how you can sit up there and put this garbage out here to the public, not have a presentation. Half these people probably didn't have a chance to read the budget because they didn't know where it was until you hunt around in the website to find it. But this budget it's terrible. It's terrible. And all I can say is anybody that votes for this budget, it's not transparent like it is. It says to canvass the residents for their feedback. I don't think I ever got a call. I don't think Mr. Kadish did, or anybody else sitting here got anybody to say, what would you like to see?
Thank you, sir. Time's up. Further comments?
I think you should have hired Mr. Lafata to put your budget together. I hate to get into this, but Paul brought it up earlier. I've been bringing it up all year. There's about $15 to $20 million that can't be accounted for that was collected from the water bill for depreciation that was supposed to be used to replenish the lines, replace old lines, upgrade the system. I can basically recall about 4 items that happened over the last 8 years that money was spent on, and it amounted to probably less than $4 million out of 20 to 24 million that was collected. Where did the rest of the money go? And the same thing I think is happening in this budget. It's being manipulated so it can be used by other departments. So it's happened. And the bothersome thing about it this year is the fact that there's nothing in this budget that goes into the fact that you looked at what happened during the flood, what caused the flood, what has to be done to correct the stuff in the flood. There's nothing in there about upgrading the lift stations, about replacing some of the sewer lines. We lied earlier in the year when I said, where is the truck, the vacuum truck that's putting up sewer lines, and oh, we use it all the time. You didn't use it. I think it was at the last meeting that you asked for $9,000 to rebuild the engine on the thing. You're bleeding this water department dry for other projects. I wish to hell if somebody, when they do their audit here, you'd let them have the access to looking at where that money was spent. They didn't get it because they didn't have access to it. You're afraid to open it up. It's terrible. And it's one of the two items in this township that we should have some control over, but we don't. You set what we're going to pay for water and sewer. You set how it's going to be paid. And you figure out how in the hell you're going to steal from it. The other one is on the police department. I still don't understand, basically, why we keep expanding this department. Statistics haven't shown that anything changed, that we've got a lot of crime here. The 2020 census said we grew by 2.5%. We grew, I think, by 4,000 or 5,000 people. Yet you increased the size of the police department from 40 to almost 60. When I first asked what was going on, it was, oh, these are retirees. We're going to replace the retirees. I didn't see any retirees go. And it keeps getting bigger. And everybody on this board sits there, every time they bring a policeman out, nobody says why it's needed.
Thank you, sir. Time's up. Further comments? Further comments on the public hearing for the budget?
John Speaker, Chesterfield Township. Again, it's a manipulated budget. I don't support this budget. If this was a private sector budget that the supervisor would have turned in, he would have been fired immediately with this type of budget. Anybody that supports this budget tonight should be fired. So, again, I've got issues with hiring people, growing government. We're growing government in this township quicker than revenues coming in. We're hiring friends of friends, which is insane to me. I mean, the insanity continues. Just to give you an example, for the '24 budget, our treasurer is going to make $92,209, but her assistant is going to make $92,465 plus benefits for both of them. So how is it that the people of Chesterfield Township elected a treasurer, but yet the treasurer puts someone else in to do her job so she doesn't have to be here and bamboozles the residents into paying for an extra person that we don't need in this township? I mean, it's complete insanity. So the assistant is going to make more than what the people of this township elected for. And then on top of that, we're going to add another person to the budget for her department. Complete insanity. Then we go to the supervisor, and the supervisor says, well, you know what, I got elected, but now I'm gonna have an assistant supervisor so I can justify paying her $90-some thousand per year so I don't have to be here. So, yeah, it's enough with bamboozling the residents. Come on, guys. You got elected to do something, do your job. You're supposed to be here Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. It's not a part-time gig. The budget stinks. It's not a good budget. We're running in a budget deficit. We've been running in a budget deficit for years. Our ARPA money,
like Janice Young said, stop wasting our ARPA money. We need, our infrastructure in this township is crumbling. For Thanksgiving, how many people were without water in this township? On Thanksgiving Day, they had people coming over to their houses. They couldn't shower, they couldn't make food. And then on top of everything else, I mean, where's the sidewalks? People want sidewalks in this township. You are not listening to what the residents want. And this is why next year is going to be a big year. And you know what? I think you're going to hear the residents loud and clear next year. So, because the residents are going to speak. The only way this nonsense is going to end is by clearing this 4 members of this board out. I mean, enough's enough. Stop wasting our tax money.
Thanks, sir. Any further comments?
Mike Wharton, 50393 Bauer. Sorry I had to do like a lot of quick homework trying to rush through this budget, just trying to speak up on here, because I thought we were going to get a presentation, but I guess not. So I guess every resident for themselves. Looking through this and cutting through some photos, I've taken on the budget real fast. Under Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services, I'd like to understand why in the 2023 recommendations, there's something called Recreation Leader that goes from 0 over the last 3 years to $132,740. I would like to know what that recommendation is all about. As I'm looking through what these personnel reported costs are, I'm very much confused as to, it showcases what, like a whole number for an individual, but there's also fractions of numbers in there too. So I don't understand how a person can account for like 0.7 or 0.3 or 0.5 on these charts. It's either a person's getting paid or they're not. You're not like working children, are you? Going through some of these other expenses on here, it says that there's budgeting for 30 part-time firefighters, but I don't think that there are that many in the department. And so I'm wondering why it is being budgeted in such a manner when there never is that many. Going off of further with other expenses that are accounted for in here, as I'm kind of rapidly trying to go through this. I wish I had more time, but I guess we're stuck with 3 minutes. It's as if a lot of the stuff hidden in the details isn't actually being reported for the 2023 budget. And so I'm seeing stuff that has expenses from 2020 to 2022 that's not being accounted for in 2023. And one that I can see on here is a lot of the expenses at the end of the fire department section. So that would be page 138. And I see some discrepancies under the police department in 133. Can we also get an explanation as to, I don't know why it's all in capital letters too, it just says cadets, going from 0 to $177,800. I have no problem with that, but kind of more information would be needed on that. Just further extrapolate on this, and please do not ignore the residents. This is the only time we get to speak on the budget. It's important to have those comments be addressed properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing at 7:38.
So moved.
Motion by trustee Joseph.
Second.
Supported by clerk Berry. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Public hearing is closed. On to the regular agenda. We will take up the first item, 8B, which was removed from the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
Item B from the consent agenda is the approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Is there a motion to approve the payment of bills?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by
Second.
Supervisor Kersten. Discussion from the board. Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'll make this quick. I have a number of issues on the bill run, but the ones that I'm most concerned about are bill run items that seem to be a workaround from our purchase policy, and that involves what is commonly referred to as stacking. So we have two bills, both occurring on the same day, for one within $14 of the purchase policy, and the other $4,166. So together, they're well over the purchase policy, and I'm wondering why and what is the invoicing process, and who's working in cahoots with these vendors to submit these things. And Porter & Black, I know that they've done some work outside of the scope of the PD. In fact, they've actually assisted me on one occasion when I was locked out of my township email. There was nobody in the township that could resolve the problem but the representatives at Porter & Black. Ms. Garby was gracious enough to put me in touch with them. So I know that they do also work general fund, and they also have invoices that exceed the purchase policy for two items that take us well over the $5,000. And then the last item is another expense at Brandenburg Park. I'm assuming this is attached to the splash pad repair, but this vendor, Frost and Ketch, for almost $2,500. That's the third consecutive bill run with a substantial amount of work being done, and I've never seen an APO. I've never seen adherence to the APO. That was deemed an emergency repair, but our APO it's not consistent with the definition of an emergency repair. The park guests not being able to be properly sprinkled is not an emergency. It should have come to the board, and yet we still get these invoices. So I'm wondering what's going on with the work around our purchase policy and why these continual stacking keeps happening, board meeting after board meeting. And I don't know who can answer that, if anybody intends to.
Thank you. Any further questions? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Regarding the billing, besides what Mr. Joseph talked about, I did support the sidewalk program for the reasons that have been well articulated in the past, the add-on of 25%, et cetera. And I know there have been complaints from our residents. As recently, I believe today, I saw one from a resident about debris left, tree roots, everything else. I know that with our engineer went out to a resident's house in the late summer here over complaints they had. I know there's been other ones. I don't know how they're being resolved. Yet I see a bill for $246,000 to one of the contractors that's working on those sidewalks. Unless we start finding out the follow-up, besides just going with this program, what repairs or what corrections are being made, I cannot support this bill run. Among other things, that's one of the major reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further comments from the board? Trustee Vosberg?
Thank you. Could we get an explanation regarding some of the items that were brought up? I'm assuming it's just an overlap of timing type of thing?
That's correct. And it's been discussed and brought up again. It was an insurance request. It was an insurance replacement.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about the park. I'm talking about the IT.
The IT is, we have expanded the long history of service from Porter & Black into the township.
The current vendor, who has been here for many years, their contract comes to an end at the end of this year. We are not prepared to go out for a full, whole-scale IT service agreement. They are graciously willing to come over and assist our current staff member as we expand. If you go back to the beginning when I first took over here, the IT network, without placing blame on anyone, the IT network and infrastructure within this building and throughout this township is lacking at best. Everything is done in IT. Everything is done with IT expertise. These individuals have graciously come over into this building and expanded their service. We'll be better prepared to address this in the future. We have multiple vendors. I think it was pointed out previously that there are multiple vendors in here, and we continue to use those services to enhance and improve the networks within not only this building, but through every township parcel.
Okay. I just wanted to know about the invoices, but thank you for
The invoices are billed on an hourly rate, and they're spread over 2-3 weeks at a time.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I'm sorry, Treasurer Elliott.
Trustee Joseph? I'm sorry.
I didn't want to speak out of turn if Treasurer Elliott had something.
Treasurer Elliott?
I'm assuming the reference to the stacking of the invoices, is that the R.J. Thomas under Brandenburg Park?
Yes?
Okay. I already asked Vicki to pull those. I asked about them earlier today, so I think she's ready for those.
Yeah, actually, that was board approved on the October 10th meeting for about $14,000. So those would fall under that.
Could you tell me that again, Vicki?
Yep. So on the October 10th board meeting, it was to approve a recommendation to install concrete at Brandenburg Park, including walkway, pickleball, bike path, barbecue, and 6 ADA bench pads, and the amount not to exceed $14,900.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, if I could.
Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, thank you. I happen to be in complete agreement with you on the IT issue. You're right, and I couldn't agree with you more regarding the desperate need that we have for improved IT. The difficulty I have is I don't think it's appropriate to just sort of unilaterally just dismiss the purchase policy and wing it. And so if we have a contract with a vendor that is not performing, we have a breach of contract. And the mechanism for that is to, end payments to that vendor and then bring forward a replacement vendor. But to simply just fold it into the bill run with no update regarding a pretty costly contract, I think violates a number of APOs, ethics, purchasing, and I don't know what the difficulty would be, if nothing else, than to just bring it to the agenda, bring it to the board, and explain that we have a breach of contract situation with one vendor, and we have another trusted vendor, something along those lines, instead of just having it appear on the bill run and nobody gets to know but you. And I would appreciate it if we could maybe communicate a little bit more when things are falling apart and we need to bring in another vendor. Just communicate that to the board. I think it would be a lot easier and a lot more confidence from the public. Thank you.
Your characterization of things are falling apart is not accurate. We're coming to the end of life with a contract for a long-term contract here that at the end of the month has been negotiated. We are working with that vendor to back away several years of input here. They've been here historically, and we are working with all parties to make this amicable, a nice, clean separation. And when we are prepared to do exactly what you are asking and other board members are asking, we will do that. We are just not prepared to do it at this time. So we're working with multiple partners to amicably separate on all levels.
A lot of words there, but it really doesn't.
Well, I'm trying to.
I wasn't properly acknowledged, so I'll wait till you're finished.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, a lot of words there, but there are, you know, those aren't typically your strong suit. We have contracts, and if we follow those, then we're all safe. When we go to, you know, a side script and we use amicably and we're coming to the end of life of contract, there are dates in a contract for a reason. So the service delivery is either followed or it isn't. They're either in compliance with the contract or they're not. You bring in a new vendor, you have additional APO obligations. So I don't know the, you know, the talk a lot, say nothing, but I'm talking about the APO and adherence to the APO. Just that simple.
You acknowledged it that you don't know a lot, so why don't you just sit back and let me handle it, and we'll bring it to the board at a time.
You're so far out of line.
Thank you.
But the adherence to contracts, that's big people talk, and I understand you don't get it, but that's what we should do.
Yep, we've got it. We've got it well in hand. Any further comments from the board? Floor's not recognized. Floor's not recognized. Floor's not recognized, ma'am. The floor is not recognized. There is a motion by trustee Joseph, or, excuse me, there is a motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve the bill run 8A as presented. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10A of the regular agenda. Clerk Berry.
Item 10A is to approve a request by the Finance Department to adopt Resolution Number 2023-34 to approve the 2024 fiscal year budget.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten.
All right, hello. Today we're talking about the 2024 recommended budget. Our first slide here is on the budget calendar and process. This is what we do every single year. We've been doing it for a number of years. There's no surprises. You can see the dates on it. This is something that is done year-round. This is not a last-minute thing. This is something that is in the budget book. It's been in the previous budget books. Starts in April. And really, we start with like a holistic approach. We have the department heads chime in with their needs, what they're looking for, what they predict their stuff is going to be. We have a very extensive capital improvement plan that Jonathan Palin and the planning department take care of, where items are submitted to them on future capital needs. And that stuff is folded into and accounted for in the budget. Additionally, it goes through, again, multiple different levels that many people have sit down and review. Eventually, it gets sent to the board. It got sent to the board for the first time on September 15th, again on October 25th, twice in November, with the idea of getting as much participation on every level. And I am happy to say the board has, come in. I've talked to several people on their different concerns, and, having the opportunity at that time to pull in any department heads and go over in great detail every single line item. And as they know, I love talking about this stuff, so, anytime during the budget process is open and available. The next slide, and again, it's, budgets kind of get boring in the sense of their structure. They're very similar from year to year. So some of this stuff is going to be what you've seen in previous years. I will point out when there's a difference. So in previous years, we have general fund, public safety, Brandenburg, building, parks and rec, and water and sewer. And this year, we have a capital project fund, which I will get into a little bit more detail in a little bit. The bottom box is just something everybody knows, but we make sure we highlight it. Right now, it's in the budget book and again discussed throughout the year. The budget is adopted at the department level. We show for more transparency it by line item, but truly it is adopted at that budget level.
Gentlemen, could you hold off? She's trying to give a presentation. Thank you. Continue, Vicki.
So the next slide is the budget summary. You're going to first see general fund with a balanced budget at the revenue and expenditures of approximately $9,998,000. Next, you're going to see public safety with slightly over revenues versus expenses with approximately $17,547,000. Building coming in with a balanced budget at $1,273,000. Parks and Rec has revenue of $398,000 with expenses of approximately $579,000. The expenses is increased from last year's budget with additional staffing, additional programming, and then of course the community center. The next two funds have an asterisk by them. They're full accrual accounting. It is what we have to do. It is required by GASB. Those have depreciation expenses in there. So when you see Brandenburg Fund at $615,000, that doesn't mean we spent $615,000. It means within that fund there is depreciation also. So that's those two funds. It's not required to budget. Municipals are not required to budget for their full accrual accounts. We do that for greater transparency. We choose to do that. Lastly is our capital projects, our new fund. You're going to see revenues of 2024 of nothing because in 2023, this is our bond fund. 2023, we have the revenues coming in. 2024, there's no additional revenues. It's just the spending of the bond. On our next page here for 2024, you're going to see our general fund revenue. Our largest revenue is our state shared revenue at 54%, followed by tax collections at 17%, and then at a tie for third is our SADs and our franchise fees. Our SAD, you're going to see that a little bit larger than in previous years because of the expanded sidewalk program that the board is taking place in. The next slide is our general fund expenditures. So general fund houses most departments. Our largest expenditure is in our general administration at 25%, followed by our F&O department at 13%. But again, you're going to see information technology, supervisors, clerks, treasurers, finance, HR. This is the all-encompassing, if it doesn't have a specific other fund, it is in general fund. Next is our public safety revenue. 94% is from tax collections. That's expected. This is a special revenue fund, meaning it has a specific revenue that is accounted for, and again, it's tax collections in this case. This is how our public safety fund expenditures breaks out. We actually have 4 departments. The first one is police at 64%, fire at 27%, dispatch at 6%, and you can't forget about administration at 3%. That's approximately a little over $500,000. So all 4 of those added together would equal the $17 million. Our next slide is our building revenue fund. Makes sense. Permits are what makes up this fund. Our largest piece of the pie is building permits, with the next 3 very similar for electrical, heating, and plumbing. Building department is a service entity. That would ring true with what is your greatest cost when you are not producing a product, but you're producing a service. Would be wages, would be your largest chunk of the pie. So in being true to that, our employee wages, our employee costs are 89%, followed by 11% and other stuff being capital, insurance, leases. And lastly, to go into that capital, our new fund a little bit more, because again, that is something different than you guys have seen in the past. A capital project fund is used to separate, track, manage, and report on the financial resources dedicated to specific capital projects. Many municipals use this. It really provides a better tracking of a capital project that we're doing. And because we went out and bonded for over $14 million for specific purposes, which is the Anchor Bay Pump Station, the Township Municipal Building Rehab, the police parking lot, and the northeast sanitary sewer, those 4 costs are going to be coming out of this 401 fund. And in the fund, when you look at the budget, it actually has line items for there so we can track how much is spent in each one of those categories. And with that being said, I will open up to any questions that the board has.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. Questions from the board? Questions from the board? Seeing no questions, Treasurer Elliott.
There's a few questions that came up during the public comment, and that was asking about property tax revenue for the public safety. And then just wanted to, you talked about a percentage. Do you want to, I'm seeing it on page 129, is that correct?
Okay, I flipped to, now what is the question?
The question was, what was the dollar amount? And I'm looking at $16,431,000.
Yep, so actually on page 130, and 129 and 130, so 129 is the budgeted amount, 130 is the taxable value. Keep in mind, what we have with taxable value and what you end up collecting sometimes are a little bit different. With delinquencies, things going to the county, when they have their March Board of Review, so there could be a small difference. Ultimately, what we budget is based on what assessing. One of the beautiful things about finance is we go to the source of who would be the most expertise person to give that information. So for this particular item, we would go to the assessing department. The assessing department is assessing for the following year. They kind of know, or they have a very good indication what it's going to be. So they provide us what will be tax collections from that. And again, there's going to be a slight difference between when they have that number via just the calculation and what their estimated amount is, taking into account all of the other items.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't remember all of the questions or whatnot, and I don't know if any of you guys have them either, but the, like the 0.7 or 0.3, there's a logical explanation behind everything, right? So like that example is, we do have an individual that they spend 70% of their time in this function, and they spend 30% of their time in this function. So it would then lead you to the next thing is to say, okay, we're going to split their salary 30% in this group and 70%. We don't hire half people or anything like that. And then additionally, I wanted to say when I was up here kind of a little bit ago, what I was talking about was the board meeting, not invoice dates. I haven't had an opportunity to go pull invoice dates to see what they are, and I would actually have to see them. I was talking about the board approval date, which is completely different than an invoice date.
And so you refer to GASB when it comes to the water and sewer account. Can you explain that a little bit for folks? Because not everybody knows what GASB is and how it works. Do you mind explaining that a little bit?
I sure can. I'm going to give it a try to summarize it. So first, GASB is the General Accepted Accounting Board, and they provide rules that we have to follow. You basically have two different kind of accounting in government and not-for-profit. You have your modified accrual, which is your general fund, your special revenue funds, which would be our public safety department, our building fund, our capital fund. Those are all modified accrual. Again, you expense things day one. And then businesses, which would be our water and sewer and our Brandenburg, are full accrual accounting, meaning you purchase an asset, you go out and you buy a car, and your cash goes down, but your asset goes up. You don't expense it. It's not as comfortable for people because they're used to their own home, and I understand that. You're used to your own home finances, which is cash basis. But again, we have the rules and regulations we have to follow, and those two funds are full accrual. But actually, if you look at the world in general, McDonald's, Kohl's, everything is full accrual. So those are treated like every other business. So that the depreciation concept, even though I know it's harder to grasp, is what is the standard for 99% of every business we deal with. It's just government that has that odd. And again, there's a ton of nuances with it that I would love to talk to you guys about. You're more than welcome to come in my office.
Thank you. Any further questions? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Sticking with the modified and full accrual concept, the difficulty that I hear from residents over and over is when you bill somebody for depreciation. So you have a water bill, and just round numbers sake, if you have $100 million in assets underground and it depreciates at 2% a year, life expectancy of 50 years, you're losing 2% roughly on average. And so the water rates and sewer rates are structured so that every bit of water that comes in and sewage that goes out reflects not only the commodity cost, what we are paying to Great Lakes Water Authority and to the county for the maintenance of the drains, but also administrative costs, the department costs associated with our employees getting the water and the sewer out, and also the asset depreciation. So when a resident comes forward and they say, like, the billing for this is reflected 2% or depreciation, and we know that it's roughly 2% on $100 million, you would have $2 million going towards, you would think, capital improvements just to keep pace, just to maintain. Obviously, we're not going to spend an exactly $2 million every year. Maybe you have a big project, you have regular maintenance and so forth, but we don't spend nearly the amount of depreciation money that's collected on the water bill. And when residents come forward and they say things like, well, when Thanksgiving, when we had water breaks and so forth, what do we do with the money that's collected for depreciation? And when a resident comes forward and says, you took my money, but there's nothing in the fund to reflect that the money is being used for depreciation, and you say, well, it's a little different than like Kohl's and McDonald's. Could you maybe expound on that piece for starters?
Absolutely. And I guess to step back even further, so we get audited by Plant Moran. They spend, I don't recall, it's between 400 and 600 hours like looking through our books. The one thing I can say is they have access to everything. There is never something that they can't look at. I have never once in my entire career have ever said, please don't look at that, or hidden something. It is what it is. Come on and look at it. I used to be an auditor myself. I'm not losing my license, and sorry about this, for Chesterfield Township. I am a CPA myself, and so if the auditors come in, they are allowed to look at it. So that's just kind of my side note. The difference, and so, again, to kind of summarize it in a shorter way, we collect a water bill. I'm a Chesterfield resident. My kids take too long in the shower. I pay a water bill here. And so when the water bill gets paid, it gets put into the fund. Every red cent of that gets put into the water and sewer fund. We don't go through and say, okay, this is going to be for depreciation, or really it's not depreciation, it's replacement cost of it. We don't do that. What one of the things is, and something that I think would be an interesting thing to look at from the board when we're going through and doing the next water rate study, one of the things that we have asked is maybe we should be splitting that dollar and saying, okay, 20% is going into a different fund. But as of today, all of the money goes into a singular fund. And if you don't spend as much money on capital as you think we should in that particular year, it stays in the fund. It doesn't go anywhere else.
Vicki, can I add to the back? And if you recall, that's what HRC was doing here to address that specific topic. I think it was May or June they gave the presentation of what we do with the depreciation and are we funding it properly. I believe that study's forthcoming by the end of the year. Karen, did we reach out to? I believe it is forthcoming, and one of the issues is to cover exactly that. We have been not properly funding the depreciated underground services throughout the township, and it has been done that way historically. So to your point and your question, hopefully HRC will be coming in here before the end of the year to address specifically that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. If I could just continue on that concept, I didn't need HRC to tell me that we took the depreciation money and for, I don't know, probably close to 4 years, there was a treasurer who said repeatedly that the money goes into the fund, it's earmarked for depreciation, and it goes to things that nobody can wrap their arms around. And when you start looking at, I'm not talking about accounting malfeasance or anything along those lines, Ms. Bauer. I'm just simply saying to you, when residents pay that water bill, and when we have rate studies and rate breakdowns, we're very articulate with why we charge a certain rate per unit. And part of that rate per unit is inclusive of depreciation. And there are very easy numbers to follow along. If you have a $100 million asset and its life expectancy is 50 years, you lose 2% a year. Just as a starting point, there should be $2 million going towards depreciation. But when you have budgets where the everything but F&O department is cohabitating with the water department expenditures, riding free, it's not part of the general fund, you start to see really not a criminal, I'm not asking you to jeopardize your license, but administratively what happens is you have an F&O department that blows the water department money out and there's no problem with that because we can just increase the water rate. And so I'm encouraged by the HRC review of how we're handling these depreciations. But one of the other comments was, why do we have F&O? And I've been in your office many, many years, and we've talked about allocated resources or revenue for, say, the police department. That comes out of the SAD. Under this budget, why couldn't we house the F&O department in the police department or the fire department and let them operate under the police SAD? Because it would be a misappropriation, correct? I mean, we really couldn't put the F&O department in the police department and not have them contribute, or anything from the general fund contribute to the space. Yet we do that with the water department. We have F&O, and we have a lot of expenses coming out of F&O. Staffing levels are pretty high. We have a lot of company cars, and all of those things are contributory to, I think, this idea of enterprise money not being, where most people think it should be when it comes to depreciation. Just moving on quickly, though, on the budget. We have a number of supplements to the 2023 budget in terms of grants that have come in, ARPA money, and of course, what will be a $20 million repayment obligation in the form of the bond request. Are we concerned that had we not had those infusions of grant money, that we would be in a completely different position with this budget and the 2024 budget?
I'm not sure there's an answer to that, in the sense of, if we didn't have the grants, would we be in trouble? But if we didn't have the grants, would we have done the work? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Fair
so
enough.
it's like chicken
Yeah.
and egg, I'm not
Sure,
quite sure.
Sure, you're right. It's a good point. Thank you. I'll reserve the balance. I know other people.
Any further questions? Any further questions? Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki, and everybody that contributed to this budget. It's a lot of work, and as that timeline showed, it takes a lot of time. In fact, almost the entire year for the process. I appreciate it very much. Is there anything else that sometimes questions are asked in the way that we understand it and not in the way that it actually happens? Are there any questions that we should be asking instead of what has been asked regarding depreciation?
You guys are throwing some good ones at me today, because I'm not quite, is there any questions that you should be asking that you haven't asked? I guess I'm gonna answer that in the sense that I feel good that every single member of this board comes in my office, asks questions, and gets what they need. And so I don't know from a board perspective if there's a question that you also, there's an additional question. Because again, my door is always open, and all 7 of you guys utilize it and put a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate that. And then, to be honest with you, I don't really have an opportunity to go through and say, you know what, thank you for all of your work and effort that every single one of you guys have put into it. As far as the depreciation topic, it's a complex topic. It's something that, I like to talk about. It's there. I do think that HRC study is something that we should really look at when it comes out. I know that's under water and sewer, but it's breaking out that revenue into different buckets, and we can, instead of having a water and sewer fund, we can have a water and sewer capital fund. Again, you need to be careful, because then money is earmarked just for that, and you can't commingle it after that point. But the water and sewer department, I've been here for, I'm young, but I'm gonna say like 18 years. No, I've been here 18 years. We've done it this way the entire time. This is the way we have accounted for it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. There's no choice about recording the depreciation the way we have. I went as far as having the auditors write a letter to the board saying, because we don't think, why do we even depreciate? We don't have to. But the things I can say is every dollar, and the auditors, they call it cradle to grave. They'll pick, again, 500 hours of looking at our books. They'll pick random people. They'll see it come into the Treasury's office. They trace it going into the bank, getting into the accounting system, every penny when it goes out. So what I can say with confidence is every penny that's collected on the water and sewer bills goes into the water and sewer fund. And then the expenses that you guys approve come out of it. In the future, all that's gonna do is take that same amount of money, unless we change rates, and put that in different buckets.
Great. You've more than answered the question. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further comments? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. Vicki, I don't have much more. Just the comment from the first presenter regarding the budget and the accounting for staff. Fair to say that has nothing to do with your department. The staffing levels and promotions and director levels are done by the supervisor. Is that correct?
We have a procedure for that. I have a procedure for everything. So the procedure for new hires would be in the beginning of the year, each department head assesses their needs, assesses their changes. They take that to the HR department. The HR department organizes it and would confer with the supervisor and the department head's input. That then is wrapped up, given to finance. Finance, of course, then does the budget and goes through all the numbers that are coming from that procedure. So it initiates from the department, flows to HR, the supervisor is involved, it then flows to finance.
No, I'm okay with the process. Thanks for clarifying it, though. But I was most interested in terms of putting the budget together, you have no veto power over, the positions. So if it goes through that process of you've laid out, it just appears and you appropriately charge it to the right department and, account for it that way, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so when the presenter talked about a specific individual, so under the process, it would go to the HR department. But what if the HR department was also our deputy supervisor, and he's now been sort of terminated and sort of cashed out, but is still here, so you have 220 days of expenses associated with that individual, and then you have now an assistant supervisor who was the assistant to the supervisor. How would you budget for that? Like that's not a beginning of the year process that flows through the HR department and the department head and then, all of that. So how do you account for that in the budget?
Well, in that specific example, when you're talking about somebody leaving mid-2023, it wouldn't apply to the 2024 budget anyways, and so I would account for that in an amendment if needed.
Well, in this case, it might, because I guess the person's already been cashed out, but the agreement actually extends into 2024. So we have somebody that you said to us just a few board meetings ago, the supervisor said is still available to us. He's still on the employee email list until June of 2024. And then we have also a person doing that job for considerable additional money. So that creates a bit of a budget problem, but that's not something that the board is necessarily privileged or you are. That's a decision the supervisor in this case makes and in all employment decisions makes. Fair enough?
Again, I think in that case, there's a lot of nuances with it.
Sure.
Yes, fair enough, but the finance department would only pay somebody out if there was a board approval.
Right.
So there was a board approval on that, and it was all in 2023. So again, not affecting the 24 budget. But I think maybe what you're getting at is finance ultimately responsible for selecting the people or saying how many people? No. But we also don't, because we have the process like many other municipals have with our capital, that goes through, again, it starts with the department heads, moves over to our planning department, and I use little examples, but if the board decided to paint the grass purple, I may not agree with you guys painting the grass purple, but if you budget for it or you approve it at the board level, I'm paying for you guys to paint the grass purple because that's my direction.
And as long as it matches the accounting,
That's the accounting,
requirements,
as long as
then
there's
that's
the
the
rules,
extent
and-
of yours.
Yep.
Fair enough. Last comment I had to do with comments from the public regarding public safety. Mr. Wharton talked about the part-time firefighters, and Mr. Kadich, it's an issue that I think you've raised several times, and I've talked to you about it personally. I will do a better job of being able to articulate the additional officers. Trustee Anderson and I meet with Public Safety Director Bassett once a month, and I can only tell you anecdotally, the increase in officers was the result of a real deficit in the department. So it wasn't the expansion, it was the just getting to a safe level. When you have shifts and you have officers in the field, there becomes a safety issue, and we were well below the number of officers needed to safely police this township. And I know that there's been a concerted effort for the past several years to bring staffing levels up to where they're safe. But I could do a little more work on that for you, and I will. I don't know that we'll necessarily be in agreement at the end, but I think your questions deserve an answer, and so I will research that, as well as, Mr. Wharton, your concerns about why are we staffing a budget or positioning a budget for 30 when we don't have anywhere near that in the part-time. So I know that is, I can say that I believe that is the goal it would be to have, And if the hiring practices and the availability of part-time firefighters matches that, we want to be prepared as it relates to the budget. But if it's not spent, it just goes back into the public safety SAD. But again, as with Mr. Cadis, I'm going to research that a little bit better and get a stronger answer for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I have a motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 10A. Clerk, 10A, Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry. Aye.
Item 10B.
Item 10B is an item that was postponed from the November 14th, 2023 regular Township Board meeting. To approve a recommendation from Human Resources to adopt and administer MERS Defined Benefit Plans, GELC Management and GELC Management hired on or after 1/1/2014, provided by the Municipal Employees Retirement System of Michigan.
Motion by Supervisor Kersten to approve. Is there support?
Second.
Clerk Berry. Mr. Kerr, are you here? You want to address this topic? So this is a negotiated item, and it's simply, well, I'll let Trevor address it.
I think you started to kind of address this. This is a carve-out of an already existing groups. It's for the new GELC management contract. They agreed upon in the negotiations regarding the employee contribution. It's going to go from 2% to 2.5. MERS just needs like an administrative policy or this resolution signed in the approved minutes so we can go and administer that for these employees.
Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Trevor, are these, Mr. Kerr, are these carve-outs any different from any of the other bargaining units? In terms of I'm sorry, in terms of the, well, there are a number of issues, specifically the multiplier and some of the other things. Are these consistent with all the other contracts?
Yes, none of that changed. The only difference for this is the employee contribution.
Thank you. This is a contract that the board, as we do all contracts, we took this into closed session. The board was never provided the contract. To this day, I don't have the contract. It was the reason I voted no on the contract, even though board members were more than comfortable voting on a contract they didn't have. Do you have the contract in its entirety?
I believe it's actually posted on our website.
The contract is now?
I believe so, yes.
With these proposed amendments? Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10B. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 10C.
Item 10C is to consider approval of a 5-year extension of the single waste hauler agreement entered into on December 17th, 2018 between Chesterfield Township and GFL Environmental USA. The proposed extension is for a period commencing January 1, 2024 and terminating on December 31, 2028.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve the extension. Is there support? Supported by Trustee Vosberg. Again, this is an extension. The contract, the existing contract allowed this extension. It provided for it. When we did meet with GFL, they actually came in and reduced their rates and provided a better financial profile for the township. And as stated in the previous 2018 language that the contract covered, this was allowable under those terms. So I'll let GFL come to the podium if they choose to address any issues entertain any questions from the board, should there be?
Supervisor Kersten, elected officials, Don Beretta with GFL Environmental, and
Rick Vanea with GFL Environmental.
Are there any questions from the board?
Yes.
Trustee Joseph.
Mr. Barnett, when you were last here 2 weeks ago, one of the objections that I had was in the, we don't need to go over it. The specific question that I asked for and what I had shared with you was that I was hoping that in the QBS process, which is our internal process for reviewing contracts and vendors, I had hoped that there would be the exploration of a inclusion of what the rate could be, hopefully significantly less or partially less than the current rate, given an element that is not currently in place in the existing contract, which has to do with the township providing for the billing services. And 2 weeks ago, when we had that back and forth, I was under the impression that you would bring back some information regarding whether or not and what potentially that could lower the residents' rate. And I was wondering if you had any updated information on that.
currently we have not met with anybody on the board to discuss that. But I can tell you is that in the original bid document, there was pricing for exactly that. That was option 3 back in 2018. So there was pricing for that. At that time, the township chose to take the second option, which was us providing the service and billing the residents and having it applied to the tax roll at the end of the year.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, you weren't here for the last debate, but the concerns that were raised, at least by this side of the board, was your email indicating a QBS process had been completed. And I don't understand how you've completed a QBS process, at least the QBS process that's identified in the APO. And the APO 11/2019 articulates fully, Section 2, what the QBS system is. And it is taken up when you're evaluating different options from different vendors. If you're saying that this was a contractually agreed upon extension, what would the QBS team be doing if not reviewing options? And it's the reason that I emailed this board and asked who was on the QBS committee. The response was nobody. Specifically, Treasurer Elliott said she wasn't on it and she didn't know anybody who was. When Mr. Barnett came in 2 weeks ago, I asked, who did you meet with? He said, you, Mr. Supervisor, you, Treasurer Elliott, who didn't know anything about a QBS team, and Trustee Vosberg. None of the discussions involved a consideration of the township handling the billing and what that would do to the rates. And so I felt kind of bad after the meeting because it's from a GFL perspective, you really had done everything consistent with the contract that you signed. The breakdown was really on our end. There were 3 members that met and none of that information was ever shared with the board. No QBS meeting minutes or understanding of how you arrived at a recommendation, if there was a recommendation. So how long will half the board not supply the other half the board with information on a $15 million contract? Why was that not provided to the board?
When you choose to participate, that'll be probably the first step.
Well, if
But
we
other
could
than
not be
that, the
personal,
provision-
sir, if we could not be personal.
Are you going to interrupt me?
Yeah, well, I just want to set
got
the
floor.
record straight. When
don't
you
want me
said that,
talking- You don't want me talking while you're
I'll
talking,
wait.
so please.
I'll wait.
The contract that was in existence only provided for a rate discussion and a reopener, and that's exactly what we did. We met with them, we discussed it, you were invited, you didn't participate or respond, so we left it at that. This GFL came in, they lived to the terms of their contract, and that's what we're here before us to decide again to extend their contract based on the rates that they provided.
Mr. Supervisor, if I may.
Please.
Your commentary about choosing not to participate, you raised this during a board meeting earlier this summer that a QBS team would be impaneled. I raised my hand and I said I'm interested. I received no emails, no invitations, no knowledge of anything to do with the QBS committee until we got closer to the contract, and I sent an email to you and my fellow board members. So it's not a matter of choosing to participate, it's a matter of being excluded from the participation. And when I sent an email asking, are there any minutes? Are there any meeting notes? Are there any recommendations from the QBS committee? And who's on it? The members did not respond. Trustee Vosberg, you were in that email thread. There were no responses regarding any of the details of the QBS. And in terms of your assertion that there was a limited scope and that inclusion in a discussion with GFL about how would the rate be impacted is absurd. You're just speaking, again, when you go off the cuff, you get real loose with the
personal
truth.
attacks again.
I'm not interrupting you, sir. You have
There
to
we
wait. You have to follow
I'll
the
wait.
rules. Good. But when you exclude half the board, you can't be confused why people are a little bit hesitant to go forward. The teamwork here is lacking, and it's unnecessary, because even if I wasn't available, I sent an email 3-4 weeks ago to the members of the QBS committee, and there was no response. Why was that?
So on July 25th, in this room, people were asked to contact my office. You did not contact my office, and we went ahead and scheduled. Roll your eyes, do everything you want to do. You're just pandering to everybody here. The terms of the contract were discussed. We are well within the terms of that contract. The discussion was to extend the contract, which GFL had an option to do, and that's what we met and discussed. You want to call it QBS, you want to call it participation? Trustee Vosberg showed up.
You called it
So,
QBS.
okay, QBS, yeah, I did in the email. What else do you want?
Just to follow the QBS process.
You don't follow rules. What are you talking about?
Here we go.
Maybe,
Child.
there we go.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So it was my understanding the QBS team it was the original team, and that is under the Chesterfield Township website, all of those from the 2018 meeting. That was the original QBS team, and you reconvened the members from that were here. That was my understanding. So in regards to those original bids and your question about what would be the difference, that is also on the same spot on the website, and excuse me, that is under GFL Frequently Asked Questions page. Under garbage collection, you go to the bottom, and there says procurement process for single waste hauler. Anyhow, there is in there the original bids from GFL, and so an example is in green, and it'll say that it says the original bid. There's options B and option C. So one option was for us doing the billing, and one option is for them doing the billing. If they did the billing, it was $59.09. And if we did the billing, it was $57.40. So it would have been $1.69 savings to the, and I say that loosely, it's not really a savings, it's just coming from a different bucket. It's coming from the general fund, and the township is now so I'm okay with it, because what you're basically saying is that you want the township to to carry the burden and have like long-term costs and hire employees to do something that, to service for a private vendor contract that maybe is for 3 to 5 years. So at a savings of $1.69. So that's the question that you asked, and there's the answer.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further questions or comments? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, that wasn't the question that I asked you, because you're talking about 5-year-old rates, so we don't know what the cost is, and we certainly don't know, comparatively speaking, to other vendors. But just to be clear, a QBS process, Mr. Supervisor, QBS process is a procurement process that is used for the competitive selection of service vendors, in which the most appropriate professional firm is selected based on qualifications. See, that's vendors. You don't have a QBS team with one vendor. You're not evaluating multiple vendors. So calling it QBS and saying the QBS team did this begs the question, which comes later in the APO, which is that the QBS team conducts a 4-step process. A 4-step process. Step 2, development of a short list. You did that real early because you just had one. So, I'm sorry, Trustee Vosberg? When we call it a QBS and we don't do QBS, that's a problem. And when I ask who's on the QBS, because you said you impaneled the QBS and nobody knows, that's not transparent and that's not open. But to GFL, the reality is you've done everything right. I don't know that you could have done anything differently. And I appreciate the rates that you've offered. I would have liked to have seen your competitors weigh in, especially on the billing portion, because I think it's substantially more than $1. And I know in my consultation with some of the officials from other firms, they really aren't even interested in a bid that doesn't include that. Unfortunately, the treasurer is very clear. She's identified $1.50 savings and the addition of 3 employees and so forth. But I think until we get a competent treasurer, then we can't really expect to take on this task. I'm
Motion
sorry?
to call the question.
Oh, I guess that's the end of debate.
Yep.
Thank you.
I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 9C. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Item 9D. Clerk Berry.
Item 9D is to approve a recommendation by the copy machine QBS team to re-enter into a new 60-month lease agreement with Xerox under the My Deal contract for 7 new AltaLink C8 145s S color multifunction copy machines at a monthly cost of $118.74 per machine, which is $1,424.88 yearly lease per machine, to include a maintenance plan and all consumables per unit. An additional per-page charge at a fixed term rate of .0069 for black and white copies and .0483 for color copies will be billed on a monthly basis. 5 machines will be located at the municipal offices and 2 machines will be located at DPS.
Motion to approve. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve. Is there support?
Support.
Your mic's not on, Brad.
Is there a motion to approve?
Support.
Support by Treasurer Elliott. Ladies, the floor is yours.
So we brought, as everyone knows, we did bring this to the board meeting on October 24th. We are bringing it back 34 days later. Xerox is our current vendor and is offering us a higher quality in machines and at a savings of $877.80 annually. I do have Jennifer with me because she is our purchasing assistant, and she is the one who deals with all the My Deal contracts and put all the information and work into this. So,
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Clerk Beard.
Not so much a question, but a comment. I wanted to thank Jennifer. I know you did a lot of work on this, and I really do appreciate that concerning the fact that we use those machines a lot in the clerk's office, and now more, even more so in elections. So we really appreciate it. Thank you also, Karen, for waiting for a couple of weeks for us to do our analysis on this to see if we could maybe help supplement the cost of some of those with the elections budget and the grant money that we're being provided by the state. Unfortunately, we are unable to do that. We could supplement costs on the RICO machines because they satisfy the Homeland Security requirements. Xerox doesn't. And so when we're using anything for elections, printing of ballots or anything like that, we have to adhere to those security standards. And also there was a question on compatibility with some of the new software programming that we were going to be provided with for the upcoming election cycle. So so what we will end up doing, and I don't know if this changes the numbers at all for you, but the clerk's office in elections will be acquiring 2 of the RICO machines in order to satisfy those requirements. So I don't know, again, if that changes the numbers. Okay. Because I think we had discussed this, and there was concerns on availability and making sure all departments had access and availability for these machines. So I'd like to thank you for all the work. We really appreciate it. Thank you for waiting. We wish we could have participated and helped offset some of those costs, but so the board is aware we will be acquiring 2 of the RICO machines at some point here in the near future because of those reasons. So, but we've all had those discussions, so everyone's aware. Karen, Jennifer, and I, we've all had those discussions and come to this agreement. So I just wanted to keep the board informed and aware of that. Thank you.
And just to clarify, the machines that Clerk Barry would be purchasing would not be available to all the other municipal office employees. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, they had their printer that they needed, and, you know, they might need to lock that up or have it or take it with them wherever they're having their elections. And we need to make sure that all of our other staff in this building still has access to a copier, because the clerk's copier is the main copier that all of the employees use.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, Jennifer, who's on the QBS team?
It consisted of IT, finance, myself, and supervisors department.
Was there any board members on the QBS team?
Just the supervisor's office.
Okay, Mr. Supervisor, again, the QBS process requires 3 board members. So I'm content, Jennifer, if you're on this, I'm okay with the presentation. But when we call it QBS, I don't know if you're familiar with the APO, but you're calling things QBS when they're not QBS. It's getting silly now because this is 2 agenda items in a row where you have a QBS team, but I don't know what QBS means to you, but in the APO it's completely different. So you might want to read that. 2011, 2019, Section 2. Spend a little time updating yourself.
Any further questions from the board? Further questions from the board? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 10D. Clerk Barry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 10E.
Item 10E is to approve a request by the Department of Public Safety to renew the Information Technology Support Agreement with Porter & Black for 3 years at a cost of $151,632 for 2024, $157,697.28 for 2025, and $164,005.16 for 2026.
So moved.
Trustee DeMink, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Director, the floor is yours. I know you covered it at the previous board meeting.
Yes, I'll just go, if you don't mind, I'll just review what we had discussed earlier. Porter & Black provide the Chesterfield Township Department of Public Safety with information technology support, maintenance, consulting, web development, social media, graphic design, publications, promotional materials, and all other technology needs of our department. Technology has become a critical part of the Public Safety Department. The Public Safety Department uses countless IT hardware, software, and services every day. That technology has to work 24 hours a day, 100% of the time, and interface seamlessly. Porter and Black have developed our system and have integrated multiple services. They have been a critical partner and have been essential in the public safety delivery. And just a couple of projects that we are currently in midstream on. We have the research and implementation of the video wall in the dispatch center, the fire department technological upgrades as part of the accreditation guidelines, research and the building security card access system upgrades, our internet service upgrade that we did in our buildings, the server license upgrade, our current Exchange server upgrades, update to the public websites for the police department and the fire department are currently underway. The cabling and implementation in the sergeant's area, as well as the dispatch center. As a part of that, going through and remediating all of the existing wiring that is in the dispatch. It's not something we can simply pull out. We have to actually determine what wires are going where. So that's part of them understanding our system and being part of that. Our current Tyler Technologies and New World system upgrades. The dispatch center upgrade that we're in the middle of, our renovation, and finally the Motorola radio upgrades and replacements. Those are just some of the projects that I'm working on right now with Porter and Black.
Thank you, sir. Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Director Bassett, when we were here 2 weeks ago, I brought to your attention the APO regarding purchasing policy, and the recitation that you gave tonight was similar to 2 weeks ago, in that Porter and Black is an integral part of your public safety team. They have done a great job, and they've even, as we discussed earlier, migrated over into the general fund to help out with IT needs here. The question that I had for you then was, what is consistent with the purchase policy and your request specifically to not bid it out? There was a question asked during the discussion. I had my head down, and Treasurer Elliott asked, and as I watched and rewatched the meeting, she was actually asking you, and I thought she was asking me, and that was this on the public safety monthly agenda? And I said, no, it wasn't. The proper answer would have been, I really didn't recall it being on the agenda. It was, in fact, on the agenda. And had I, during the course of our meeting, had we had the opportunity, I wouldn't have set you up for the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago. I would have asked a little bit more about the adherence to the APO. And the APO does provide for one area of not needing to go out for bid, and that is if the vendor is providing a proprietary product. But there's also another one. We had some debate, and the compelling reason from the department head was the questions that I was asking you. How do we stay in compliance with the APO and not bid it out and get you what you need in the IT? Is it your position that it is a compelling, there are compelling reasons to stick with Porter and Black, therefore we aren't actually adhering to the APO, the purchasing policy? Is it your position that there is a compelling argument as to why this vendor is uniquely positioned and maybe a single vendor that can provide what you need?
So 2 parts. I can understand our public safety meetings. We go through 1,000 things, so I can recognize, I'm sure we can, it's easy to forget one thing we touched on.
It won't happen again.
So, no,
I didn't mean to make you look bad, because it
I
was
totally
a direct
understand,
question
though.
and I blew it. So.
It's easy to forget all the things, so that's not an issue in any ways, but I appreciate you mentioning that. But absolutely, yes, that is my position, that there is a compelling need for not only our officers, but the safety of our public, that this vendor at this time is necessary for our department. That is my position.
Well, I heard from a number of officers, and I personally have had some limited experience with the members of Porter and Black. They took it pretty hard, and it wasn't my intent in any way. They're very skilled people, and I really was just trying to adhere to the purchase policy, and I'll do a better job during our team meetings to make sure when we have one of those issues that we can talk about it before we get here, because clearly the feedback over the last 2 weeks is there is a compelling reason, and that does fit with our APO. That does not require us to take it out for bid. So apologize for not having that discussion with you earlier this month. Thank you.
Is there anything more? Any questions? Any, Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, I just noticed, and even on the material here, they've had this Porter and Black, I believe, several past chiefs have been here. I think it's gone back to 2001 that they've had this firm. I think at this late date, you know, we keep talking the QBS process, but I think Trustee Joseph kind of nailed it well. I was kind of more concerned in the process than the actual product, which sounds like it's outstanding. You've given what I believe is a very reasonable reason why we should stick with it. If we're looking prior to 2026, that'd be the time, look at a QBS process at that time as far as continuing it, or, you know, whatever at that time. So I do support this contract.
Any further? Trustee Bassett, just so you know, this is the same approach you took, is the same approach that was taken in 22, 23, and 19. So I appreciate your time and effort. I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 10E. Clerk Barry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Clerk Barry, no.
Item 10F.
Item 10F is to approve the second reading and adoption of ordinance number 201, an ordinance amending Chapter 50, Parks and Recreation of the Charter Township of Chesterfield Code of Ordinances by revising definitions, repealing the prohibition on bringing dogs within the boundaries of township parks, prohibiting controlled substance within township parks, providing for permitting of activities by large groups within the park, and repealing any and all ordinances and/or resolutions in conflict therewith.
Is there a motion to approve? Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Second.
By Trustee Demink. Ms. Vanderson, the floor is yours.
Sure. Again, this is the second reading and request for adoption of this change in ordinance. I'm going to go through the individuals and just give a little bit more detail on each part of it, just as I did before. Again, the last time this ordinance was looked at or updated was updated in 1976. It's something that shouldn't be updated every year, but should be updated every few years. We need to make sure that it's in working order of what we are using it for. So for the next 50 years, we hope to be continuing to use it in this way. Definitions were updated to redefine parks. Currently, as the ordinance stands, it only talks about Brandenburg Park. That's the only one that falls within that Parks and Recreation ordinance. This broadens that scope and includes the definition for current parks that we operate, as well as future parks, as we expand our parks in future years. It will allow dogs that are leashed and within park rules that are able to be in the parks. Again, they are currently not able to be, except for that through traffic at Brandenburg Park, where they can walk right along Jefferson. That's the only place that they are allowed at that park. It will also include Pollard Park and like I said, any current and future parks that we have. Park activities and gatherings will be updated for large gatherings. It'll provide a little bit more control and accessibility for those who want to use the park. They're able to rent a pavilion or go through the township board and get approval to do a special event permit for that. Changes to this ordinance will put that final ruling on how groups can utilize the space, in that they do have to have approval before having a large group, meaning 50 or more folks who are in the park for one activity. Other changes to that park ordinance include additional changes in updating the language of vehicle use within the park to make it more current, more modern times. It'll not allow animal entrapment on the parks. Again, clarification with how other departments do the same thing in other townships and in cities. The clarification that public parks do not allow controlled substances within any violation of state or federal law. Again, that's just creating that stance and a backing for us to monitor the park use.
Everything else would fall under the park-specific rules and department-specific policies. Things like operating hours of the park or scope of when the park is open for the season. That all falls within the department rather than within the ordinance.
Thank you. Any question? Trustee Anderson.
I actually have two, and the first one, throughout this, that, you know, you're setting up the parameters, what the occupant or what the person, what the expectations are, I guess it would be of behaviors, and quite often I see shall not, you know, which is good. My first question is in the event that there's a violator and it has to be addressed, what are the consequences? And if it gets to that point, who's the complainant against that violator? I don't know if that's a question for council or if you want to answer that. I mean, you can tell people to leave, I'm not leaving. Who's going to be the complainant on it to sign the warrant or the request?
Sure.
That's my first question. You go ahead.
Sure. So whenever there's an issue in the park, it starts with our park staff. When it's a seasonal position, it starts with that park supervisor that's on site at all times during operating hours. If the issue is not resolved there, their next step is to call in law enforcement to handle the complaint.
So I guess the second part of the question would be answered by law enforcement. My other concern or question is, in the past, you had leader dogs exempt. I'm sure I can understand that. I mean, now we have guidelines, but we're allowing people to bring in their dogs on a leash. And you've listed, or it's listed where they're prohibited. The concern I haven't seen a real durable fencing around the splash park, which is occupied with 2-, 3-, and 4-year-olds. My time up? Sorry. It's not a plant, is it? Splash park's occupied by little children. And if the event, something happens, which shouldn't, there's a child injured by one of these dogs, have we taken, as a community or as a township board or as a department head, have we looked at risk management and checked with our insurance carrier to find out what type of liability, what type of protection the township has, just as much as the dogs walking back here? I just wonder, I'm more concerned about the park there with those little kids and some types of incidents that are we going to be liable if something happens when we're passing this thing? Thank you.
I can address it. What our current policies are don't change when we allow dogs or not. If a dog is in the park and an incident happens, an incident report is filed. Again, law enforcement would be called to manage the situation on site. That is the same that would happen whether the dog is permitted to be there or the dog is not permitted to be there but not listening to those rules of our first guards. As far as the insurance, I would defer to our attorney for that one.
Counselor, will you address that issue?
I'm assuming, Hank, you're referring to a situation in which a dog gets off the leash and bites some young child, right? The answer is we have no liability.
If there's any litigation, any civil suit out of that, does the township have any liability there?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Demink, to approve 10F. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Nope.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 10G, when you're ready.
Item 10G is to approve a request by the Department of Public Services to purchase sewer treatments in the amount of $2,100 monthly during November 2023 through April 2024, and $4,890 monthly for May through October of 2024 for the 21-mile road, 54-inch sanitary sewer from Jefferson to I-94.
Trustee Demink.
Second.
Supported by Clerk Berry. Mr. Copier, please.
This is a part of a pilot project in partnership with Macomb County Office of Public Works. The Department of Public Services purchased sewer treatments from Eganics Incorporated to lower the H2S levels in our sanitary sewer system, specifically the 54-inch sanitary pipe along 21 Mile Road. These sewer treatments additionally provide reduction of odor, BOD, FOG, and TSS, which is your biochemical oxygen demand, your fats, oils, and greases, and your total suspended solids in the wastewater. The 21 Mile Road I-94 MCOPW connection has the highest rate of H2S in the county. H2S is a highly corrosive gas formed in sewer pipes by bacteria. Once the bacteria has eaten all the available nutrients in the sewer water/sludge, the bacteria then begin to strip away the nutrients from the cement pipe walls inside the sanitary main. By following a dosage schedule, we are able to lower the H2S for our flow into the county interceptor while also extending the useful life of our infrastructure asset. Macomb County is tracking the progress and will quantify the data to monitor the success of the treatments. Treatments during the warmer months are more due to the increased H2S activity, which is why prices are increased May through October. The Department of Public Services will evaluate this data throughout the project and determine successfulness. If treatments continue to prove successful, DPS will request the board to expand to other areas in our system.
Real quick, Paul, this is the noxious odor you smell on 21 Mile Road when you're heading to the freeway?
Yes.
This addresses that
Yep.
issue. Thank you. Questions from the board? Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for bringing this forward. Does the township own the pipes that go along the roadway? They're describing here where they're going?
Yes, this sanitary pipe along 21 Mile Road is owned by the township.
Okay, and how about the place where they meet and where all that odor comes out? Who owns that structure? And what's it called? What's that? Is that a lift station or is that?
That would be where our tie into the interceptor right there at 21. That is our flow coming from the 21 Mile pipe is what is going into that connection point. So anything that would be coming in and any odors that would be coming from there would be from our flow that is coming out of the 21 Mile Road pipe.
Okay, well, just what I'm getting at, does County Public Works own any of that structure?
They own the interceptor that runs along 94.
The interceptor, okay. And I'm wondering why we have such a high rate of bad stuff.
The reason for that could be part of the sanitary pipe itself. It is a very large pipe, so the flow coming through there might not be as great as what you would get in some other areas. So the water tends to sit there a little more stagnant and gives it more time for that bacteria to start attacking the sludge inside there and then attacking the walls of the pipe.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that. And is the County Public Works doing anything to change how that interceptor works?
They are, well, for one, they will, part of this pilot project, they will work with us to be able to do all the monitoring for us, which is a costly price that we are going to have to take on. They will take care of that for us. And then also, they are working on trying to improve chemical feeds up at the NGI North up by 25 Mile Road.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further questions? See no questions. I have a motion by Trustee Demink, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10G. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 10H.
Item 10H is to approve the 2024 Charter Township of Chesterfield meeting calendar and adopt resolution number 2023-35.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Any questions from the board? Questions from the board? Seeing none, Clerk Berry.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 11, addendums. There are none. Item 12, public comments. There is a 3-minute time limit. If you would, again, state your name, not required. Comments from the public? Comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, I live on Sutton. We don't have many people here. I hope there's a lot of people that are watching this thing on TV. But basically, the whole thing today comes down to trust. And the fact that a lot of everything that goes on here is basically presented as this is what it's going to be. There's no action or any call for any input from the public, even though we're the ones that pay the bill. It's what you decide here. And mainly it's decided by Supervisor Kersten. Now, getting back to the water situation, when you were appointed first supervisor here, I think I gave you the same letter I gave Dan Accavetti, because we worked on the, along with Trustee Joseph, the water rate board. Came out what should happen, how it should happen, wrote a white paper on it. One of the big things on there was that the enterprise fund should be iced off, the depreciation money should be iced off and used only for replacement lines, improvement in that. Now, it can be done. Where's Vic? Vicky's not here. Because essentially she ices off so much money for the bond payments. She accumulates however many hundreds of thousands of dollars out of that fund to pay the bonds. She also ices off a certain amount of money so that we don't get down below a person point, because of the fact we get paid or you get paid every 3 months for the water bills, but we pay monthly to Detroit. So there has to be a certain amount set there that we don't run out. It's possible to do that. You don't have to go to some kind of a capital fund. You can do it right there. Accavetti chose not to do it. You chose not to do it because it's convenient. You can use that money for whatever you want. And the other part of it that's being used for, I didn't check this year. Last year, you had the water department paying two women employees as clerks getting paid by the water department. Then you went further, you had the water department and public works, which was out of the general fund under your jurisdiction. You combined it all. So you got out of having to pay for the public works, and everything's coming out of the water department. And now you're going to come back sometime in December or whatever and say, you've got to pay more money, even though I blew everything that you gave me or I took everything that we gave you. That's what happened to it. And it's particularly disturbing because of the fact that
Time's up, sir.
we had the...
Time's up. Thank you very much. You can't donate time, sir. I did. I did. No. I did. Next speaker. Next speaker. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. The attorney doesn't get to respond to you, sir. You know that. Please. Please, Mr. Kadich, stop. You know the rules. Please. No. Next speaker, please. Next speaker, please. Next speaker.
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. We have a board that doesn't follow their own APO policy. They go into closed session, they vote on the contract they haven't seen or even go over. How do you vote on something when you don't know what's in it? But yet, this board does. Supervisor Kersten does, Kathy Elliott does, Kathy Vosberg does, Brian DeMink does. It's all he needs is 4 votes. Then when somebody tells the supervisor he's off the cuff, he takes it as a personal attack. Kathy Elliott talks about a 5-year-old contract with GFL where it's going to save the residents $1.69. Well, 5 years ago, it would have saved the residents $1.69. Now, we could have had maybe a $5 savings or maybe more. But nobody took the opportunity to look at it to try to save the residents money. They're great at spending our money. They suck at saving our money. That's quite evident. Then, when we have a discussion going on, Trustee Joseph says that we have an incompetent treasurer. He's right. So what does Trustee Vosberg do? She calls the question. On the call of question, it's to end the debate immediately. The question called. I call a question. It needs a second. That's all she needs is a second. A vote is then held immediately. No further discussion is allowed. And 2/3 vote is required for passage. That is Kathy Vosberg's go-to. Call the question every time when she wants to stifle anybody on this board. Because she doesn't want an open discussion. She doesn't want to be transparent. She doesn't want the residents to know what they're up to because they all think they're smarter than us. They're not smarter than us. They're wasting our tax dollars, and they know it. The GFL contract, it was voted down at the last township board meeting, but yet they brought it back. I'm sure they went through Mr. Seberg, and Mr. Seberg gave his opinion. I'm going to disagree with Mr. Seberg. I don't think it should have been brought back or voted on again. Porter and Black came back. It didn't get bedded out. The whole thing was what Trustee Joseph was talking about, and Hank Anderson and Cindy Berry is, Cindy, we have a process here. The process was violated. The process is to ensure that the residents are getting the most bang for their dollar, that our tax dollars aren't being wasted. They completely blow the process. They could care less about anything. And right now, because they're in control, they think they can tell us and the rest.
Thank you, sir. Time's up. Any further comments from the floor?
Paul LaFata. Township's got a real problem with the water and sewer expenditures and the way they book revenue. In 2015-16 timeframe, AEW did a cost study. There was 3 iterations. I have a copy of those iterations. The iteration that was accepted by the board for the rate increases, I still have a copy for them. There's only about $1.42 actual cost of water from Great Lakes. Everything else is documented. Depreciation, bond payment, labor, everything else. The problem is the money's collected and it goes into the enterprise fund and it's not segregated. We honestly collect about $2.4 million every year, if not more, because it's based on equivalent meter usage. With growth, it increases our revenue. We don't account for it, we don't segregate it, and somewhere it's getting pissed away on the floor because we don't have it. But I can show you the records, I can show you how the cost was structured in 2017, and the money ain't here, so it's going somewhere. I can show you the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. So you got a problem. You need to fix it. It's a real one. Honest to God problem. I'll show you the numbers. Anybody want to contest it? Anybody want to debate it? I'll show you the numbers. The numbers are real. Numbers don't lie. We pay about $10 and some odd cents per cubic foot. It's a coefficient factor, 7.48 conversion to gallons. And it's about $1.40 some cents. And we pay $4 and some cents for water and $5 some cents for sewage. And the other problem is we pay Macomb County Drain Commissioner every month for operations and maintenance, and we don't get an itemized bill, and nobody knows what we get for that money. Because I've asked the directors of Coddington didn't know, and Accavetti forbid him to ask. So we don't know where our money's going, and the board is stupid enough to let it keep happening like that. But it's real. It is real. Real as I'm staring at you right now. But I can show you the data, and I can show you the invoices. And the rates shouldn't be raised by a percentage. It should be raised by actual amounts. Because when you start raising things by a percentage, like the RTS, you've just compounded the payments that the residents are making for bond payments for the 15-mile sinkhole. You get extra money for that. So you need to really deepen. And HRC isn't going to look for it. They're going to try and please you. Because
Thank you, sir. Time's up.
Thank you very much for turning the microphone off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Calm down, calm down. Next speaker.
Because that's a polite thing to do.
Christopher Pierrick, Chesterfield Township. There were a couple comments made earlier today about stacking expenses, or there were a couple line items on the bill run that were for Brandenburg Park improvements. Both those items were just under $5,000. So the comment was made that did we stack these so that we didn't have to go through the board approval process. Ms. Bauer gave an explanation that was approved on an October 10th board meeting for those improvements. A couple issues with that. One of them is that the vendor that is on the bill run does not match the vendor that's noted in the agenda item for that date. And another item issue is that one of those line items was dated 5 days before that board meeting approval. So it'd be really nice to get some clarification on that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further comments?
I just want to set the record straight because I feel like I can never defend myself up here. That my, according to the GELC management contract, which is available online to the public, my salary is $75,000, not $90,000, Mr. Speaker. And also, if you guys researched a little bit more, my old previous job as assistant to the supervisor was never filled. So therefore, I'm actually doing 2 jobs, but I'm only getting paid for 1. So you guys might want to note that as well. And then I did get promoted. I did go through the interview process, and I was promoted as management coordinator. And my title, yes, it was changed. It was changed during union negotiations. I am doing the same duties, but my title was changed because all the other elected officials' assistants have the same title name as assistant clerk, assistant treasurer, assistant supervisor. So I just wanted to set those records straight that my income is not what you keep saying it is, especially in the public's eye and online. And you can look any of that information up.
Thank you, ma'am. Any further comments?
Janice Young, Yorkshire. I'm going to bypass the comments I had written because I have a nice little article here. It's Reporting Corruption in Local Government, a guide to promoting transparency and accountability. A couple definitions: conflict of interest. When an elected official makes decisions based on their own personal gain rather than on the well-being of their community, they are becoming involved in a conflict of interest. Fraud is a broad term which describes intentional deception or deliberate misrepresentation of facts and information for personal gain. Nepotism means giving an unfair advantage to family members or friends in employment and other opportunities. Irregular financial activity. Another sign of fraud is irregular financial activity. There may be unauthorized expenditures, unexplained budget overruns, or discrepancies between financial records. Government funds may be also diverted in unexplained ways. If citizens can access their local government's financial activity, they can more easily identify signs of corruption. Transparency and accountability are essential here. Of course, there's favoritism. Which companies or contractors do local government officials hire to perform work? Which people are appointed or hired for positions? If the same companies or contractors are hired over and over again, favoritism may be occurring. Inflated costs. Citizens can also watch out for public services whose costs keep increasing, such as waste management, to those of neighboring communities. Lack of transparency is one of the best ways for local government to avoid corruption, is to have transparency. By providing citizens with accurate public information and financial records, officials can remain accountable to their communities. If officials refuse to disclose information that should be public, corruption may be occurring. Failure to address concerns. Have any members of your community already raised concerns about potential corruption? If yes, how have officials responded to those concerns? If accusations or complaints have been brushed aside without investigation, it may be worth taking a closer look. It's essential that we hold our elected officials accountable for their actions. I think in light of everything that's been going on with this board, there is a cloud of corruption that's been forming around certain members of this board, and it is growing. And it's the direct result of your behavior, your lack of communication, your lack of transparency, and definitely tied to your efforts to silence the residents. If changes are not made to increase communication and transparency, I believe it's time for the residents to seek a higher authority to open an investigation. You will leave us no choice but to do so to get the answers that we're looking for. As far as the few things that came up at the meeting, I don't understand accounting, full accrual, I don't know. All I know is Brandenburg Park, Supervisor Kersten, you told me from day one that that park's been operating at a deficit for a long time. So they can try to brush off the numbers as accrual or whatever. I'm just saying, you've told me it's operating at a deficit, and it still is. And I will be FOIAing those invoices for R.J. Thomas for the Brandenburg Park that were dated before the October 10th meeting.
Thank you. Any further comments from the public?
Mike Wharton, 50393 Bauer. It's kind of funny that earlier today I was teaching 8th grade social studies, and I'm just going to say the 8th graders were better than you guys were tonight. And I don't know what that says about us as a community, as a society. I don't know if it's just general distrust among adults, be they in or out of government, be it just a general malaise. I don't know. But I don't like the way it keeps going. And at some point, they're going to face a breaking point. And what is that going to look like? I've been warning everybody for well over a year now that I believe next year's election is going to be extremely contentious in the local level, let alone what we've seen regarding national politics. So I do have worries that that is going to spill over and that egos are going to be driving everything rather than actual politics. When I look at, I was happy to have some things addressed regarding the budget, but it still feels like the whole budget process, I think the presentation should have happened before the public hearing on it. So basically, a lot of people didn't know everything that was going on in the budget. Because I guess we have to do our homework now before coming here. Now, I know some people do, and I applaud them for that, but not everyone does their homework. And you would think that having a public hearing would entail that the presentation would come before the people are allowed to talk. This is a part of the communications issue here in the township. This is why distrust is so rampant, is because there is a lack of proper communication, lack of proper discussion amidst yourselves and amidst the rest of us with you. This has been an ongoing problem that has been on for years, and it only seems to get worse, not better, even though we know the problem, yet it never gets solved. I'll leave you with this, though. Last week was the 60th anniversary of the assassination of President Kennedy. And in here is a good quote that we can live by in regards to what the late president had to say. "We are not afraid to entrust the American people with unpleasant facts, foreign ideas, alien philosophies, and competitive values. For a nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. The question then regards, are we afraid to have that proper discussion? To have that proper discourse? If we are to be successful in the future, I think that that is important, that we reestablish trust with our government and with ourselves. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have distrust furthermore.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the public? Any further comments? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Domingue.
I'm glad we got the information technology for the police department through. Director Bassett, and I think quite a few of the officers are quite happy about it. Secondly, there was a comment made to me last weekend that included my father from Mr. Spica. For one thing, Mr. Spica, you never knew my father. My father's been gone for 35 years. You've only lived in this township 3 or 4 years. My 91-year-old mother heard the comments. She would be here tonight if it wasn't this late, because she's got a few words for you, too. For one thing, my dad was never in politics. My dad was a laborer. He started at the bottom and worked his way to the top in the water department. He was never in politics. Now, my mom, yeah, she was in politics. She sat up here for eight years. But your reference to me riding on my father's coattails, you're out of line. And the things you're saying is the same things you did in the city where you lived before, because quite a few people on a city council have filled my ears with all kinds of things about you. Just. So, I'm good. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, my yes vote on Porter Black. Yes, we need to follow the QBS process. It wasn't followed in this case. I know it's coming up again. It should come up again prior to 2026 for renewal. It has been in place for over 20 years. It's a very efficient program. The chief gave the rationale why we do need it. I think right now I voted yes. This is a question of public safety in maintaining it at this point, even though the protocol may not have been followed. That's more important, I think, keep our residents and anyone safe. GFL, that comes up in December of 2028. Hopefully, there's not I don't think there's any, I didn't notice any agreements like there was on this contract for an additional 5-year build on that. So that should be subject to that process. The ordinance on the dogs, I do not mean to besmirch the great dog owners, the people that look out for their pets. I do have concerns of the township says okay to bring your dogs on a leash, trusting that people are good people, to a park in which little children are running around. I just have a problem with that. And we're the last line to look out for that. Finally, hope to see you all Friday night for the tree lighting. Santa comes to Chesterfield to see what he brings us. And one last thing, we got from our election guru, says that according to this right now, it says Tuesday, February 27 is election day for the primary. So kind of scratch that on your calendar. It used to be, I believe, in July. It's a little tentative. It's a tentative date, but Tuesday, the 27th of February. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. Just to follow up on some comments that were made from the podium. Mr. Kadich, you're right. It does come down to trust. And that routine of, thank you, sir, is really just one of the most disrespectful thank yous you could ever offer somebody. The contempt that is shown to the residents that come to the podium is really unbelievable. But when you cut people's opportunity to speak on agenda items and you give a public hearing before you present the budget, you invite that kind of reaction. You invite additional FOIAs, so our FOIA coordinators now will be tied up with trying to answer questions that should be answered here, and on it goes. And I don't know. I don't know if there was going to be water hoses turned on you. I was waiting to see when the chemical agents were going to come out and they were going to drag you out of here, because you know, the thought of giving you an additional 15 seconds to finish your thought was just, you know, inconceivable. There was no way we could do that. Mr. Speaker, just for the record, I didn't call the treasurer incompetent. My point was that when we're looking to solicit bids that incorporate a potential billing from the treasurer's office, and the treasurer meets those with the we'll have to hire 3 additional employees routine, you're never going to get the bid process. So my point was a more competent treasurer, not an incompetent treasurer. Treasurer LaFata, you were spot on. I said 2 million, you said 2.4 million, but I do recall when we had the Water Sewer Rate Advisory Committee, we looked at everything, and the equivalent meter charge, when we discovered in that process, had not been calculated properly for years. So the township was losing money there, and that panel corrected that. Fraud, transparency, and concerns, there is obviously a cloud, and it continues to grow with every board meeting, and it's frustrating. Mr. Wharton, I know you see it as egos, and I do too. I will tell you this. The supervisor made a comment earlier in the meeting, something to the effect of, would you just stay down there and let me handle things? And that level of disrespect isn't directed at me. It's directed at the people that put me here. So for the record, in November of 2020, 14,511 people put me here. In November of 2022, 12,689 people put him here. So those numbers, Mr. Supervisor, you keep running your mouth, I might have to show you something, and this time next November, I might be willing to give you a job working at the dog park cleaning up. So you should really be a little bit more respectful.
Trustee Bowser.
It's a little hard to even know what to say when people are asking questions and then assume that there's something wrong and devious that's behind the question. They're going to hear the answer that they want to hear. Thank you.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you. There was a question regarding the R.J. Thomas piece, and the in the bill run, those invoice dates are correct, and those invoices are correct. The finance director earlier today, when I had asked her, emailed me those invoices, and then when I look at the agenda item from October 10th, that was actually for the concrete pads. So that's what that 14,900. So I think she misspoke when she said that tonight. But regardless, there was no stacking because those are 2 different items. So I think that painting it down that avenue is not fair. These items were 2 different items for the Brandenburg Park. Brandenburg Park is something that's very important to the residents, is often, many residents do support it, but it is something that costs, that it doesn't generate revenue that supports the uses there. A couple other things I want you to be aware of is when there's a lot of talking, a lot of negative talk, and calling the employees out for things and making assumptions. I don't know if those of you who are sitting here at the front realize that they walk out. They walk out because they don't want to hear it, and so that happens a lot. And I think you saw that frustration tonight from one of our employees. And I'm sorry, Karen, that you have to put up with that all the time. The other thing is whether or not one treasurer is more competent than the other, in your opinion. The original GFL QBS team was in 2018. That was under the former treasurer. That committee included both a representative from Water Sewer, and then that treasurer sent a representative from his office at that time to be on that QBS team. Both of those folks did not support the billing, and so there's a reason for that as well. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First, I would like to let everyone know that the clerk's office is currently, in addition to working on a lot of things with elections, which just got finalized as far as dates and so forth, with the legislature adjourning at the time that they did, that locked down that February 27th presidential primary, so we do now have that set in stone. The other thing that I'd like to let everyone know is that because our election commission was so proactive in taking some steps to make a lot of changes with regards to precinct organization and so on, we are able to take advantage of some of the legislation that also will go into effect in time for us to really help mitigate some of the enormous costs that we are going to incur with the 2024 election cycle. A lot of other communities were not as prepared, and so I'd like to really thank Trustee Vosberg and Trustee Anderson, myself. We were on the election commission, and we spent exhaustive time going through all of the possibilities to best position Chesterfield when and if that opportunity came about. It did, and as a result, Chesterfield will see itself far ahead than quite a few other communities who were not prepared, and they don't have time now. We already had things in place, and a tremendous service that those representatives here that served on that election commission provided to the residents. So we will be updating you. We are preparing all of the education programming and education materials to disperse to the public. That will be happening. You'll see that at probably midway through December. You're going to start to get a lot of communication from us all the way up to the start of early voting, which will be February the 17th. So please watch for that. I'd like to end my comments tonight in saying this. When I train the hundreds and hundreds of election inspectors that I've trained over the course of my career here, one of the things that I always teach, I always have a slide in addition to all the other election-related materials, is I have a slide that says kindness, courtesy, and respect. I teach it to my staff. I said, you know, I understand if you make a mistake. I understand if you need assistance with something. Please tell me, we can fix it. But what I don't tolerate in my office or among the people who work for me is a lack of kindness, courtesy, or respect. There's no excuse for that. I have had my fair share of attacks here on this board over the years. I've always maintained that. And I'd like to encourage everyone. I think we'll all get more of what we want. I know it's frustrating, but if we can just maintain kindness, courtesy, and respect. With regards to FOIAs, we're also working on an opportunity for people to make it easier for you to get the records that you need. We're also working on that program. We're going to be unveiling that as well here probably right around beginning of the year. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make it real quick. Pass that memo down to the trustee to the right of you. Maybe a Dale Carnegie session again for him might help that out. Thanks for calling out my midterm numbers. Not that I really paid attention to them, but that was midterm. You're up to the challenge in November. Throw your hat in the ring. I'm all open for it, if that's what we're discussing. But again, it all dissolves down to personal attacks. There's the business of the township is all I concern myself. Everything you do is personal attacks. Whether it be Duchesne, whether it be Accavetti, whether it be Lovelock, whether it be a fellow board member, it's always personal. And it's very sad. As I said previously, you got a lot of talent. Unfortunately, I learned late in my career. When you wrote a memo recommending me for this position, you either lied then or you lie now. And I hate to say that it's a lie, but it is a lie. So with that being said...
Buyer's remorse.
Well, and that's exactly what those are the comments. You call other people out for interrupting you, but look what you do. Your hypocrisy at board meetings is deplorable. And I know you're getting tired. You're sweating again, too. Your face is getting red. Blood pressure's going up.
You like this, Vosberg?
So,
you like this, Vosberg?
We have a closed session tonight. This is unfortunate that these meetings dissolve into these sort of banters back and forth, all initiated by a trustee. And it's sad. It's sad and unfortunate. I've become accustomed to it. I don't like it. That's not why I took this appointment and then ran for this position. And hopefully, as has been stated very clear, that there is new blood that's coming in the next election. So that being said, we do have a closed session. I will take a motion to enter into closed session for, there are 3 items. Clerk Barry, you want to read what they are? I don't have them in front of me.
Closed session item A is discussion regarding strategy and negotiation sessions pursuant to Section 8C of the Open Meetings Act. And item B, to consult with the township attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection with specific pending litigation in the matter of Althea Holdings LLC et al. Versus Chesterfield Township, Macomb County Circuit Court, docket number 2023-003380-CE, and 2020 Outdoor Media LLC versus Chesterfield Township et al., Macomb County Circuit Court, docket number 2023-003755-AA, pursuant to Section 8(1)E of the Open Meetings Act. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to enter into closed session.
By Clerk Barry, supported by Supervisor Kersten at 9:45.
We have to call roll.
Call the roll. Clerk Barry, would you call roll? Trustee Anderson, hold on a minute. Trustee Anderson? Hey. Hold on 1 second. Clerk Barry, would you call roll?
Clerk Barry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Closed session at 9:46.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to return to open session?
Motion.
By
Support.
trustee Domingue, supported by clerk Berry. Return to open session at 10:28. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Trustee Domingue?
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye. Item 15A, I will make a motion to approve the 3-year labor agreement for, clerk Berry, go ahead and read it off. I will make a motion to approve item 15A.
To approve the ratification of a 3-year labor agreement with the IAFF firefighters beginning January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2025.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Domingue? Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Item 16, adjournment. I will take a motion to adjourn. at
Motion to adjourn?
10:29. Trustee Domingue, supported by
Support.
clerk Berry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.